Hey, good morning. It's Friday. It's amazing how these days kind of lose track of each other when you're not on usual schedules. Anyway, today is April 18th, which makes Sunday, April the 20th, or 420, as we've come to understand that. I have to let a dog in. I'll be right back. Sorry, dogs are like kids. They are doing absolutely nothing when you're not busy, and as soon as you start to do something, they need something. Now, there's still one more dog outside, so there's a risk of me leaving again. Anyway, 420 has the reputation of being kind of like New Year's Eve for cannabis smokers. And so what I want to do is help alleviate some of the myths and legends and give you the truth about what that particular day is all about. So I'm going to share a screen here again. I'm going to share that screen, and then we have to go to slideshow and from the beginning. Okay, so 420, the history. So what it isn't. Now there's all sorts of myths and beliefs about what 420 is and isn't. So one of the myths that was a police code for catching somebody who had cannabis. That is not true. It is not the California Penal Code for cannabis. 420 is not that. Myth, there are 420 chemical compounds in cannabis, which is also not true. There's over 500. Myth, all the clocks in the Pulp Fiction movie are set to 420. That is also not true. April 20th was Hitler's birthday, which is actually true, but has absolutely nothing to do with this. 420 was the date of the Columbine High School shooting, again true, but there is no connection. Columbine was tied to Hitler's birthday. 4:20 p.m. is tea time for cannabis consumers in Holland. There is no tea time in Holland. There's another dog at the door. I'll be right back. Sorry, we should be dog hassle-free for a little while, unless they see something outside that they want to chase. 420 is the anniversary of Bob Marley's death. That's also not true. So what really happened? So in 1971, a group of 5 San Rafael High School friends, known as the Waldos, by virtue of their chosen hangout spot after school, a statue outside of the school, they were cannabis smokers. And one of the problematic traits of regular cannabis smokers is that they tend to have less motivation and kind of less work ethic. Cannabis does create a reduction in motivation. These young gentlemen typically got in trouble at school either for not showing up on time or not getting their work done, and frequently had detention. And detention ended at 4:15, and they arranged to meet at 4:20 every day after school by this statue. Then, they were stoners. remember that weed was about a quarter as strong as then as it is now, so they were always late. I explained that. The statue was of Louis Pasteur. 420 became the code for let's get high and started to spread around California. So, you know how cultural names and innuendos and suggestions start to spread around. It started to spread around California. And at this time in the early 70s, one of the really popular bands was the Grateful Dead, headed by Jerry Garcia. And I would like to play some Grateful Dead music, but Facebook won't let me do that because I don't have the rights to do that. So when I'm done, you can go do a iTunes search or Google search or YouTube search for Grateful Dead and check some of that out. That's kind of what they look like. Several of their band members are deceased because of substance-related problems, alcohol and other drugs. And very typical looking group for a 70s band. And I got to skip that because I'm not allowed to play the Grateful Dead. Anyway, that's Jerry Garcia. I think I can play like about a minute of it before Facebook gets mad at me. Let's try. I still have a little bit of rebel in me. So that's the Grateful Dead. And the Deadheads were their fans. And among the Deadheads were many, 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 many chronic cannabis users. And they picked up this 420 logo, 420 idea, and made that part of the Deadhead movement. The idea of hey, it's 420 in the afternoon, let's get high. And at the same time, there was an organization called the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, which basically was an organization that was trying to legalize marijuana. So what's going on now is different than really what 420 was about a few years ago, because now we do have legal cannabis. But NORML was the organization that worked really, really hard for a long time to try and get cannabis legal. And the 420 time became something that NORML picked up as the day that they would start to really push the idea, like make it a special day of celebration for trying to organize the legalization of cannabis. So that's the 420 celebration in Vancouver in 2017. And 420 ceremonies or celebrations have become pretty popular in different parts of the country. Vancouver is one of the bigger ones, as you can see. And interestingly enough, that started to help people understand that cannabis was a little more than just weed. Last year in 2017, I'd done this a couple of years ago, so that's just why it says last year. 420 celebration, over 60 teens ended up in emergency for marijuana overdoses. Now, one of the things that people have always said is you can't overdose on marijuana, and that's not true. It's highly unlikely that you will have a lethal overdose, but anytime you have too much of something, that's an overdose. If 420 was the only day a person smoked weed, then it wouldn't be a particularly big deal unless you do it too much. If you're doing it regularly, it is likely a problem. And we've talked about how much is too much. And for the adolescent brain, any cannabis isn't really particularly useful. I got called last night by a parent whose son was starting to have some psychiatric issues, primarily because he's been smoking too much weed. And that's not an uncommon situation. We have to remember that this is a drug, and all drugs have potential for causing harm. And for adolescent brains, this stuff isn't useful. So that's really all I wanted to talk about with that today. So I'm going to stop sharing this. And again, you know, those questions, is what we're thinking true? Is it really true? How are you feeling or acting because of how you're thinking? And how would you feel or act if you thought different or changed your thought? That's really significant. So if you think that this stuff isn't hurting you, and you know, you're having some anxiety, you're having some depression, you're having some mood issues, you get agitated, frustrated, irritable if you can't get it, but you're still telling yourself that it's just weed or just marijuana. What you're doing is putting yourself in a denial situation. You're not really looking at the problems that that particular drug is causing you. So again, and I've said this on several of the shows that we've done, if you don't think what you're doing is a problem, then leave it alone for a while. Take a break from it and check the differences. See what changes with you. If the idea of leaving it alone is scary, or you think, I'm not doing that, or I just bought some weed, like I can't leave it alone now, then really what you're saying is that that stuff has more power over you. So this year on 420, what I'd encourage you to do is go out for a walk. And if you want to get really adventurous, go for a 4-hour and 20-minute walk. Wear good shoes, be careful, enjoy yourselves, and have a good day. Take care. I have to stop the recording.